Chapter 3. The day would never end. The whispers unraveled Andrew the most. Furtive glances. A conversation cut off as he slid into his desk. That crawling feeling at the back of his neck that warned him someone was staring. Thomas ignored everything with a deliberate stoicism that Andrew couldn't muster, and packed their schedules left with no time to talk. Dove's AP classes kept her far away from the both of them, so Andrew was left with a mouthful of pins instead of answers to why she was avoiding Thomas. By the time dinner arrived, he felt too sick to be hungry. Stepping into the dining hall meant being pounded by a wave of chaos. Every room in Wickwood was nothing if not antiqued and stately, but the dining hall rarely seemed under such control. Hundreds of voices tangled with the clatter of plates and cutlery. Mealtimes had been broken into two halves, and the seniors dined second. It meant less supervision. They were supposedly responsible, and therefore meant way more noise. The hall itself looked like something from a medieval king's court. 3 long oaken tables with benches on either side took up most of the room, and a huge fireplace that smelled of evergreens and hazelnuts covered half a wall. The seating style was meant to prevent cliques and encourage pure conversation, but Andrew suspected it had been specifically designed to torment introverts. Thomas had detoured to the bathroom, so Andrew decided to catch Dove in the serving line. He slid into place behind her and resisted the urge to slump his forehead onto her shoulder and moan. "I hate everything." He pressed his fingertips to his temples. "Have you talked to Thomas?" "I haven't seen him." Dove crossed her arms over her stomach. "It's roast chicken and apple turnovers. They're giving us false hope before the weeks of meatloaf start." She inched towards the serving line, stacked with plates, and passed Andrew one. "So," he said, "are you and Thomas going to fight the whole year, or—" Dove huffed. She looked worn after the long day, wisps of hair escaping her tight ponytail. "He can talk to me." Sometimes Andrew thought Dove and Thomas were in the midst of their own 3-act play. First friends, then enemies, and then lovers. That would inevitably come next. Andrew was sure of one bitter truth. He'd rather have his lungs punctured than watch Dove and Thomas fall in love. Sometimes he'd lie awake at night and unpack all of his feelings about this boy-shaped hurricane called Thomas Fry. He didn't know if he wanted to be Thomas, reckless and uncontainable, or if he wanted to kiss him. He could imagine Thomas's soft lips on his for approximately 5 seconds before the entire construction crumpled like wet paper. Because there was always after. There was always more. People didn't just kiss and continue on with their lives. They undid buttons and touched mouths to hot skin and lost themselves within each other. And Andrew didn't want to think about any of that. At all. Ever. He didn't have crushes, and he didn't think celebrities were hot, and honestly, the whole thing was stressful and overwhelming, and better left boxed up in the back of his head. He was just this mess who felt things about Thomas and couldn't shape them into coherent sentences. And he was most definitely certain Thomas liked Dove. Dove reached the front of the line and tried chatting with the servers, though they ignored her, more interested in the line moving faster. A few students had begun staring at Andrew, but he kept his eyes on the ground as he trailed after his sister and had his plate filled with a heaping serving of roast chicken, peas, and a roll. At the condiments table, Andrew fussed with the butter while Hyder, who sat behind him in history, helped himself to gravy. "Hey," he said. "Glad you're back. Sorry about everything. You doing okay?" Andrew's scarred fingers clenched around his plate. "I'm fine." Any more of this and he would ask the wolves to devour him. He cast about for somewhere to sit while Dove got cutlery, then followed her to the crowded tables. "It's just, I don't know what you and Thomas fought about, and I don't know why everyone keeps looking at us." Dove sighed. "Sometimes I don't know what reality you live in." He frowned. What is that supposed to mean? But then Dove nodded to where a boy with a mess of auburn hair was slipping out of the dining hall in an illegal escape. "Do you need me to stay with you, or should I chase him?" Dove said. It felt like a trick question. Eating alone would be hell, but of course she would have to go after Thomas. Fix this. Andrew would stop being such a coward about being left by himself. "Go make up." He hoped she didn't interpret it as make out, too. Dove vanished, and Andrew walked slowly down the long rows of benches that had turned into hostile territory. No one would notice if he tossed his food into the trash and escaped. But when he turned, Lana Lang stood there with one hand on her hip. She was Chinese American, wore deep mauve combat boots despite school regulations, kept her hair pulled back in a jagged ponytail, and had an expression flat as a severed heartbeat. To be scared of Lana was common sense. Fake smiles and false fronts melted before her. You had to be real or she took you apart. She flicked a gaze up and down Andrew, her mouth a thin line. You wandering around like a lost puppy. Did Thomas misplace you? Andrew never knew whether to be meek or defensive with Lana. Their paths didn't cross often. She was firmly Dove's friend, not his. He's busy. And yet all the seniors are required to be at dinner. I swear, he has the compulsion to do the opposite of what he's told. Come on, sit with me. Panic set in. It's fine, I'll sit. Lana stalked toward an empty section at the furthest table. I won't make you sit with my loud friends, Perrault. It'll just be us. He was tired and it was the easiest to just obey. They sat down across from each other. Lana had drowned her plate in gravy and now set to executing her chicken as if it wasn't dead enough already. For future reference, Lana said, you can sit with me any time. Dove must have put her up to this. Apparently Andrew looked so pathetic and lost whenever he was left to his own devices that even his twin was embarrassed. Andrew started to ask Lana what Dove had told her, but she glanced over his head and sucked her teeth. He followed her gaze and was almost thrown into his plate by an almighty backslap that could have been considered a jovial greeting, or assault. Bryce Kane leaned between them, a hand squeezing Andrew's shoulder. It looked friendly, but Lana gripped her fork like a weapon, and Andrew thought his shoulder was about to break. The school had a zero-tolerance policy against bullying, so Bryce curated his image to be described as charming and energetic. He was one of Wickwood's best tennis players, and a delight to have in the class. He had wealthy parents on the school board, and kids flocked to pay tribute to his court. And he got off on making them grovel. He knew how to be terrible without looking like he was being terrible. Hey, it's the Goth and Vegemite boy, he said. An unlikely couple. How's your summer, Andy? Eating shrimp on the Barbie and banging kangaroos? I'm goth because I wear combat boots, Lana said. Wow, original. Andrew shrugged off Bryce's arm. No point in reminding him that July was winter in Australia. It was fine. Weird seeing you without Dove. Bev scrubbed Andrew's hair. Or your girlfriend. Where's Thomas Ride, the psycho these days? Heard he's getting visits from the cops already. Lana half rose from her seat, her face gone white with fury. Back off. The level of venom in her voice surprised even Andrew. Bryce raised both of his hands in mock fear. No need to get hysterical. Just joking around. Be chill and normal, you know? You're lucky Thomas isn't here, Lana snapped. You'd have a broken face by now. And that is why I'm not surprised the cops are already on him. Don't you know why Wickwood let him back in after everything that happened last year? He strode off, already shouting across the hall at a friend who hollered back in greeting. It took Lana a while to stop steaming and sit back down. Protecting Andrew was Thomas and Dove's job, so Lana stepping in should have felt conceding. Andrew should be mad, but at least he hadn't had asked him if he was okay, or said anything cryptic about last year, or commented on his ruined hand. Andrew ate half his roll before he noticed Lana watching. He absently rubbed his healed hand against his cheek. The scars aren't bad. I don't know why everyone's looking at me. The problem isn't the scars, Lana said with clipped precision. It's that you smashed your hand through the mirror. He wished she wouldn't have said that aloud. It was so blunt and ugly. Lana went back to stabbing at her food. They'll stop staring eventually. Some senior will get into a ridiculous scandal in a few days, and boom, attention gone. They're a bunch of airheaded gnats, she chewed, deliberate and angry. But what was with all those cops? It's day 1 of school. Thomas is unbelievable. What are people saying about it? Andrew asked quietly. You don't want to know. Trust me. Her voice turned into steel. The thing you need to do this year is keep your head down and graduate. Survive. Don't... She pointed her fork at him. "Let Thomas get into fights for you. They want a reason to expel him. If gossip gets bad, come to me. I'll help. Got it?" Andrew felt a little dizzy. Lana and Thomas should have been friends, what with the way they were, all teeth and knives out. Except Lana was a cold scalpel, and Thomas was a wild machete with blazing emotions that he'd never learned how to moderate properly. It still didn't make sense that Lana had taken a sudden interest in Andrew. He was fine. It had only been one mirror, 1 minute of lost control. Andrew, a string drawn taut. Snap. Blood all over Thomas's shirt as he dragged Andrew away from the wreckage. "There's something else you should know." Lana's voice sounded odd. "They've put up a fence between the school and the forest." Andrew shredded the rest of his roll into tiny pieces. "Okay. No more class hikes. No more exploring. Immediate expulsion if anyone's caught climbing the fence." She had to be warning him for Thomas's sake. Thomas, who breathed best with his cheek pressed against the tree and never wasted a single chance to slip out and be as wild as his soul demanded. "Everything is shit." Lana propped her chin against her fist and sighed. "No offense, but I have no idea why you wanted to come back." The reason was obvious. It didn't need to be said. "I should go find Thomas." Andrew slid from the bench. He flexed his scarred fingers and slipped his hand into his pocket. Paper crunched, and he frowned at the unexpected scrap. He hurried away from Lana before he took it out and smoothed out the corners. Thomas's work, unmistakably. A stark winter forest, every tree burned white with frost. A boy with horns and roses grown from his eyes held a knife, and he was midway through carving the heart out of another boy with moth wings who knelt in the leaves, his face tilted upward in supplication. Vines blossomed around them, tangled and unruly. Thomas always drew like this, murderous and dark, silent forests with teeth and claws, boys made of thorns, studies of hands with flowers blossoming from the cuts, beautiful and horrible all at once. He drew like this because Andrew wrote like this. They fed off each other relentlessly, their fever dreams bleeding through their eyes and long after they woke. Andrew burst out of the dining hall. He'd barely eaten, but it didn't seem important. If Thomas had illustrated Andrew's story, then it had to mean something. Or maybe it didn't. Thomas drew Andrew's work all the time. How was he supposed to know that last story had been a confession about how Andrew felt about him? Andrew hated the way his brain did this, destroyed beautiful things. It was like he couldn't just hold a flower. He had to crush the petals in his fist until his hand was stained with the murdered color. The corridors lay empty. No sign of Thomas and Dove. They'd probably be outside, letting the dusk eat their angry words. The noise from the dining hall turned muddy the further he walked, and he kept waiting to bump into other students. Counselors touring new kids around, clumps of friends catching up, teachers coming and going from their offices. The manor should be busy. Andrew paused in the darkened foyer. It was a rare thing to be perfectly alone. He breathed out slowly and tried to shake the anxiety thickening in his stomach. But all he could smell was the forest. Damp leaves and mud and the fresh smell of snapped green sticks. He shouldn't be able to smell the forest all the way up here. Someone had moved behind him. He didn't turn because it was obvious the person was trying to sneak up, feet too heavy and breathing muffled as if they were on the cusp of bursting out laughing. He knew it was Thomas about to pounce on his back. Andrew relaxed slightly. His fight with Dove must have been resolved. Everything would go back to normal. "I can hear you," Andrew said, a small smile forming. Thomas flung his arms around Andrew's back, and they stumbled forward a few steps. Andrew grunted, but he secretly enjoyed it. He started to jab an elbow into Thomas's ribs, but something soft and warm pressed against the nape of his neck, mouth to skin. For a minute, Andrew did not move. His stomach swooped so violently he didn't know how he stayed standing. The foyer was so still, darkening around the edges. He heard Thomas stop breathing. The weight hanging off Andrew's back felt heavy now, too much to hold. He had to say something. What did Thomas want from him? Hot breath brushed the back of his neck again, and then, inexplicably, a tongue slid soft and wet up to Andrew's ear. It was a line of heat, sensual and terrible and confusing. What was Thomas doing? This. Andrew whirled around, shoving Thomas off. But the force of dislodging another body threw Andrew off balance, and he fell down on one knee. When he scrambled up, breathing too hard, the foyer was empty. Silence stretched in front of him. He touched the back of his neck. Wet. He realized now that the feeling of a body pressed up against him had been all arms. There had been no legs. Stop it. There hadn't been anything there at all. Obviously. You're losing your mind, Andrew whispered, not sure if he was embarrassed or horrified at what he had imagined. It was all so real. He could feel the tongue licking toward his ear. He stuffed his trembling hands into his pockets and hurried outside. Get a hold of yourself. But he didn't know what part of himself it was safe to hold on to.